March 17, 1943, Tirpitzstraße 7678, Berlin. The folder struck the polished mahogany desk with such force that Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's porcelain cup rattled, spilling dark coffee across sensitive intelligence documents, papers that, if seen by the Gestapo, would have guaranteed a death sentence. "Impossible," he muttered. "The Americans must be feeding us disinformation through compromised channels." Through the tall windows of the Abwehr headquarters, Canaris could see the Landwehr Canal, where Rosa Luxemburg's body had been dumped nearly 24 years earlier. Now, as head of German military intelligence, he held in trembling hands a report that defied not only Nazi propaganda but the entire mathematical framework upon which German victory was built. According to decrypted transmissions and reports from agents still active in Mexico City, the Ford Motor Company's Willow Run facility was producing one B-24 Liberator every single hour, a single aircraft composed of 1.5 million parts, 450,000 rivets, and 30,000 separate components, weighing 18 tons, assembled faster than Germany could build a basic Kübelwagen. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, standing rigid before Canaris's desk, had verified the figures 3 times. The numbers held. Neither man realized it yet, but this moment marked the beginning of the most catastrophic intelligence failure of the Second World War, the German command's utter inability to grasp, accept, or convey the staggering scale of American industrial production to the Nazi leadership, ensuring the Reich's downfall through a fatal miscalculation of sheer arithmetic inevitability. The collapse of German intelligence regarding American manufacturing strength had begun 2 years earlier. In 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Köhler presented Hermann Göring with reports from military attaché General Friedrich von Böttcher in Washington, warning that American aircraft output was nearing 2,000 planes per month. Göring had laughed, literally laughed, dismissing it outright. "Americans can build refrigerators and razor blades," he scoffed, "but not warplanes." "The Americans are bluffing," Göring told Hitler at the Wolfschanze in December 1941, just 4 days after Pearl Harbor. "Their democracy makes them weak. Their mongrel population makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot possibly produce what they claim." By March 1943, however, Abwehr networks throughout the Americas were reporting something that defied every tenet of Nazi racial theory and economic logic. Reports came from Mexican industrialists sympathetic to Berlin, Spanish diplomats, Swedish businessmen returning from Detroit, even intercepted letters from American workers to relatives in neutral nations. All said the same unthinkable thing. Ford's Willow Run plant alone was turning out more heavy bombers than all of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Oberstleutnant Nicholas Ritter, head of the Abwehr's Luft Intelligence section under Feldluft, spent 3 weeks dissecting the data. A former Lufthansa pilot who had lived in the United States for a decade before the war, Ritter understood American industry better than most of his peers. From his old apartment in Manhattan, he had once watched the Chrysler Building rise, the tallest structure on Earth, built in under 2 years. Now, staring at the figures before him, he realized Germany wasn't merely fighting another nation. It was fighting an idea, industrialized modernity itself, Herr Admiral Ritter reported to Canaris. If these numbers are correct, and I believe they are, then Germany has already lost the war. It is now only a question of mathematics and time. The intelligence came through circuitous routes, each more dangerous than the last. Georg Nicholas, running the ABS primary network in Mexico City, had cultivated sources among American businessmen who traveled freely between Detroit and Mexico's oil fields. These men spoke casually of miracles they witnessed, unaware their dinner conversations were being transcribed by German agents. On February 3, 1943, American oil executive Harold Morrison had attended a reception at the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. After several tequilas, Morrison began describing his recent tour of the Willow Run facility, arranged by Ford to showcase to potential investors the company's capability to fulfill government contracts. Gentlemen, Morrison had said, unaware that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent posing as an Argentine leather merchant, was memorizing every word. What I saw defies description. The assembly line is over a mile long. The building is so vast that clouds form inside it, and it sometimes rains within the factory. They have 42,000 workers, including thousands of women, Negro women, building the most complex machine ever created. Morrison had pulled out a pencil and began sketching on a napkin. The bomber has 2 bomb bays, each holding 4,000 on an LB of ordnance, 4 engines, each producing 1,200 horsepower. They produce them in sections, sub-assemblies Ford calls them, that converge like rivers flowing into the sea. Wing sections arrive from one direction, fuselages from another, tail assemblies from a third. They meet at precise points along the line, Blumhardt asked, trying to sound casually interested. But surely such complexity means frequent breakdowns, production delays. Morrison had laughed. That's exactly what Consolidated Aircraft thought, he said. They ridiculed Ford, claiming airplanes couldn't be built like automobiles. But Ford deconstructed the bomber into 60,000 separate tasks. Each worker repeated a single operation endlessly. A woman who once made breakfast for her children now installs hydraulic lines in the tail assembly. Training takes days, not months. Some of the most precise intelligence came via Francisco Franco's Spain. Colonel José Ungría, Spain's military attaché in Washington, maintained cordial ties with U.S. aircraft manufacturers while secretly funneling intelligence to Germany in exchange for the tungsten shipments vital to Spanish industry. In March 1943, Ungría attended a diplomatic reception at the Argentine embassy, where he met Charles Sorensen, Ford's production director and the mind behind Willow Run. Believing he was speaking to a neutral official who might seek post-war contracts, Sorensen spoke freely about the plant's unprecedented output. "Colonel," Sorensen explained, unaware that every word would reach Berlin within a fortnight, "when I visited Consolidated's San Diego facility in 1940, they were building B-24s outdoors in the sunshine, each one slightly different, requiring 180,000 man-hours apiece. I knew we could change that." Ungría pressed for technical specifics, posing as a fellow engineer. Proud of his work, Sorensen elaborated. "I spent one night in my hotel room in San Diego sketching the entire workflow. We would build bombers as we build cars, not by having workers swarm over a static airframe, but by moving the aircraft past stationary specialists. Each person would perfect a single motion through repetition." The Spaniard asked about managing such an immense workforce. "We created an apprentice school that trains 8,000 new workers every week," Sorensen replied. "Women make up 40% of our staff, better suited for fine assembly, smaller hands for tight spaces, more patience for precision work. We have black machinists operating advanced tools and boys of 16 managing logistics. Democracy, Colonel, means using every capable citizen." Reports from Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish intermediaries soon corroborated these claims. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited Willow Run in March 1943 and wrote, "The factory runs with efficiency beyond European comprehension. 1,600 specialized machines, many dedicated to a single operation. The capital investment is astronomical, perhaps $200 million in tooling alone." A coded dispatch from Japanese Naval Attaché Commander Toshikazu Omi to Tokyo, intercepted by German intelligence, confirmed the same. "This single factory," he reported, "produces more aircraft each month than the entire Japanese aviation industry combined." By April 1943, Abwehr analysts had compiled data from 17 independent sources, all aligning. The figures were staggering. Willow Run alone rolled out 650 B-24 bombers monthly at peak, while total American production exceeded 1,400 per month. In search of undeniable proof, Admiral Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius, the infiltration of saboteurs into the United States by submarine. George John Dash, leader of one of the two four-man teams, had lived in America for 2 decades before returning to Germany in 1939. His secret orders were clear: verify U.S. aircraft production before any acts of sabotage. In the early hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's group landed at Amagansett, Long Island, coming ashore from U-202 under the cover of darkness. Within days, racked with guilt and recognizing the futility of his mission, Dash surrendered to the FBI. During interrogation, he revealed something that astonished his captors. Admiral Canaris himself told me, Dash confessed, that Berlin doesn't believe your production numbers. They think Willow Run is Allied propaganda. He wanted photographic evidence, employee lists, shipping logs, anything that would force Göring to face the truth. Göring to face the truth. FBI agent Charles Landman asked in disbelief. They don't believe we're producing a bomber an hour? Dash chuckled bitterly. Agent Landman, I lived here. I've seen your auto plants. I told them if Ford could make a car every minute before the war, they could easily build a bomber every hour during it. They called me a defeatist. On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Canaris personally briefed Göring at Cairnhall, the Reichsmarshal's opulent hunting estate north of Berlin. The meeting would become infamous among German intelligence officers for Göring's utter refusal to accept reality. Canaris laid out photographs, intercepted cables, and corroborated reports from dozens of sources, spreading them across Göring's massive oak table like a dealer showing a losing hand. Herr Reichsmarschall, Canaris began carefully, we have confirmation from 17 separate channels. The Ford Willow Run facility is producing one B-24 Liberator every hour, consistently, since January. Göring, weighing over 280 lb by this point in the war, picked up one of the photographs showing the assembly line stretching into the distance. Canaris Göring said with contempt, "Do you take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, props for propaganda. The Americans want us to believe they can build aircraft like sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers monthly at most." Canaris pulled out another document, an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad showing aluminum shipments. Herr Reichsmarschall, they're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this one plant. That's more than our entire monthly production. Göring laughed harshly. Then where do they get this aluminum? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been deceived by American propaganda. A week later, Canaris was summoned to the Wolf Schanze to brief Hitler personally. The meeting included Generals Jodl and Kittel and Propaganda Minister Isef Goebbels. Hitler, studying maps of the Eastern Front where the Wehrmacht was preparing for Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, listened impatiently as Canaris presented the intelligence. Mein Führer, Canaris said, knowing he was risking his life. If the Americans are producing 1,400 B-24s monthly, plus equal numbers of B-17 plus their fighter aircraft plus British production, the anti-aerial bombardment of the Reich will soon exceed our defensive capabilities. Hitler's response was characteristic. Admiral, the Americans are capable of mass production of simple goods, automobiles, refrigerators, but a bomber is not a car. It requires precision, skill, dedication. When it took us 6 years to prepare for war, they claimed to have achieved this in 16 months. It's impossible. General Jodl studied Canaris's figures and made a calculation. Even if we accept 1/4 of these figures as accurate, the figures are false, Hitler interrupted. The Americans entered the war in December 1941. Building this miraculous factory and achieving this production in such time is impossible. Unknown to Nazi leadership, Canaris had obtained film footage of Willow Run in operation through American intelligence contacts in Switzerland. The film smuggled via Spanish diplomatic pouches showed 5 minutes of the assembly line in full operation. Canaris and his deputy Hans Oster watched the film in a locked room in Abwehr headquarters. The camera traveled along the entire mile-long assembly line. B-24s in every stage of construction moved past at steady pace. Workers, men, women, black, white, performed tasks with mechanical precision. A clock visible in several shots confirmed the timing. "My God," Asta whispered. "It's true." Canaris lit the film with his cigarette lighter, watching it burn. "We cannot show this to them. They would accuse us of creating fake footage or being traitors." In November 1943, German intelligence obtained aerial photographs of Willow Run taken by a Spanish diplomat. Photo analysts spent weeks studying the images. Their conclusions: parking lots contained approximately 12,000 cars, indicating 3 shift operations, completed B-24s visible at adjacent airfield, 47 aircraft ready for delivery, assembly line visible through skylights, aircraft spaced exactly as reported. Rail sightings showed dozens off-rate cars delivering materials. Hedman Werner wrote, "Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence production rate appears accurate. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment." Göring. Shown the photographs dismiss them as clever American. Photographic manipulation, probably using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister and the only Nazi leader with genuine understanding of industrial production, secretly obtained the American intelligence. His diary entry for May 15, 1943, discovered after the war, reveals his despair. If the Willow Run figures are even half accurate, we face not defeat but annihilation. They produce more aircraft in a month than we do in a year. But I cannot speak this truth. To do so would be my death warrant. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, head of SD Inland and a trained economist, analyzed American economic data. His report to Himmler in December 1943 was stark. The Ford Motor Company's peacetime production in 1941 was 1.1 million vehicles. They have converted this capacity to bomber production at current rates. By June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24s alone to drop our entire 1940 London bombing tonnage every single day. On Christmas Eve 1943, Canaris received intelligence showing American production projections for 1944 toward B-24, Liberators 18,000, B-17, Flying Fortresses 12,000, B-29, Super Fortresses 1,000, Fighter Aircraft 40,000, total 186,000 aircraft. Hitler's response when presented these figures: the Americans claim they will produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations have produced in all of history. It's absurd. By February 1944, Canaris was removed from his position, suspected of defeatism and treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was a Nazi loyalist who wouldn't dare contradict Hitler or Göring. But reality couldn't be ignored forever. On February 20th, 1944, Big Week, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, sending over 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft factories. In 6 days, they dropped more bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland told Göring, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I've counted over 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are real, and they're dropping real bombs." On June 6, 1944, over 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over France. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Feld Marshal Hugo Speer sent a desperate message to Berlin. The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves. By April 1944, Willow Run achieved its peak production rate. That month, employees in 2 9-hour shifts working 6 days a week produced 453 airplanes in 68 hours, a production rate equal to finished B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. The plant employed 42,331 workers, including 11,000 women, 26% of workforce. 26% of workforce. 3,800 African Americans, around 9% of the workforce. And 200 workers with disabilities, roughly 3%. Such a demographic reality would have completely shattered Nazi racial ideology. Those the Reich deemed inferior and unfit were outproducing the so-called master race by staggering margins. After the war, surviving German intelligence officers revealed how deep their failure truly went. At Nuremberg, Walter Schellenberg testified, "We knew the truth about American production as early as 1943. Every professional analyst recognized the figures were correct, but to deliver that truth was to invite execution for defeatism." Another officer, Hans Bernd Gisevius, later wrote, "Our tragedy was not ignorance. We were drowning in accurate reports. The tragedy was that our leaders refused to believe them, because those truths clashed with their racial mythology. Many who tried to report honestly paid with their lives." Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, executed April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg. General Hans Oster, executed the same day, same camp. Alexis von Roen, executed October 1944 for ties to the July 20th plot. Only Gisevius escaped to Switzerland and survived. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey later confirmed everything those doomed analysts had reported. Willow Run built 8,685 B-24 bombers between 1942 and 1945. At its peak, the plant turned out 650 aircraft per month, sustaining that tempo for months on end. The cost per plane fell from $238,000 to $137,000. When post-war interrogators asked Albert Speer why Germany ignored such intelligence, he replied, "To believe Ford could produce a bomber every hour meant admitting our entire worldview was false, that democracy was not weak, but powerful, that racial mixing produced strength, not decay, that women could match men in labor. It would mean accepting that we had started a war we could never win." Who dared tell Hitler that? Rose Will Monroe, the real-life inspiration for Rosie the Riveter, had worked that very production line. In a 1984 interview, she recalled, "We knew every rivet mattered. Sometimes we worked double shifts and slept in the parking lot. Our brothers, husbands, and sweethearts were flying those planes. We couldn't slow down." Germany's disbelief carried catastrophic consequences. Fighter production, resources wasted on bombers long after they'd lost the skies. Resource allocation, vast sums squandered on wonder weapons instead of defense. Strategic planning, operations based on facing hundreds of bombers when thousands came. Diplomacy, peace overtures delayed by delusion. Captured documents stunned German economists. Willow Run alone cost $200 million, while Germany's entire aircraft industry investment from 1933 to 45 was just $400 million. The factory's 3.5 million square feet dwarfed all but the largest German complexes. Its 2.5 million kilowatt monthly power draw rivaled entire cities. By war's end, the scale was undeniable. B-24s, 18,188. Total, 8,685 from Willow Run. B-17s, 12,731. All U.S. aircraft, 1940-45, 303 H-17. All German aircraft, 1940-45, 94,700. The numbers tell the story of a nation's willpower. America, fighting across two oceans, built more than 3 times as many aircraft as Germany. Historians now call the Nazi refusal to accept that reality one of history's greatest intelligence failures, not because the data were missing, but because belief was. In the rubble of Berlin, American forces found one last German intelligence report on Willow Run, dated April 20, 1945, Hitler's final birthday. It read, "We confirmed these figures 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany falls not for lack of knowledge, but for lack of wisdom to accept truth over ideology. Reality does not bend to belief. Mathematics does not bow to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy. That report never reached the bunker. By then, the Thousand-Year Reich had only days left. The very bombers born at Willow Run were writing the war's last lines in fire across German skies. The verdict of history is unmistakable. German intelligence was capable, but its leadership's denial was fatal. Reality is indifferent to faith. Those who elevate ideology above fact are ultimately destroyed by it. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy thrives on diversity, that freedom multiplies strength, and that truth, once ignored, will always return as consequence.